Because at the time, the book was very narrowly focused on overcoming imposter syndrome. And I kind of say that in quotation marks because for me, at least, it isn't something that I've overcome once. And now I'm like this super confident person who's walking around like every time I level up, every time I challenge myself, every time I step outside of my comfort zone, I feel that imposter syndrome. And I'm
Welcome back to Fearless Narrative, a show that's all about the incredible stories of women who are changing the game, breaking the rules, and pushing through the boundaries to face their fears head on because they are fearless entrepreneurs and creatives, and we love to see it. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and on our show, we go into a deep dive into captivating storytelling and engaging conversations with these incredible women as they share how they are pursuing their passions and shattering glass ceilings along the way. We love that so much. It's so inspiring and so empowering to share these stories with you. And hopefully it will empower you to embrace your own fearless path. Our show is all about feeling the fear and doing it anyway, as well as women supporting women. We love that. We need more of that always. So before we get started, don't forget to hit the button to subscribe to our show. We also would love a nice 5-star review at the end. Without further ado, let's go into a new episode right now. Enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to Fearless Narratives. I am your host, Courtlyn Jones, and today we are honored to introduce you to an exceptional storyteller who's igniting change through her words and wisdom. Joining us is L'Oreal Thompson Payton, an award-winning journalist and the upcoming author of Stop Waiting for Perfect, Step Out of Your Comfort Zone and Into Your Power. L'Oreal's journey is a testament to the power of storytelling. Her personal essays, feature stories, and celebrity interviews have graced the pages of esteemed publications such as Bustle, Essence, Fortune, Self, Shondaland, and Well and Good, among others. But L'Oreal's impact extends beyond the written word. Her speaking engagements and wellness facilitation draw from her own personal struggles with self-doubt, imposter syndrome, infertility, and postpartum depression. As we embark on this conversation, prepare to be inspired by L'Oreal's journey, her advocacy for self-belief and empowerment, and her unyielding commitment to amplifying the voices of Black women. L'Oreal, how are you?
good. How are you? Thanks so much for having me.
My pleasure. Your journey from journalism to empowerment is incredible. Can you share the moments that led you to use storytelling as a tool to inspire and uplift Black women?
Yeah, no, I have always loved reading. And then that was just a natural segue into writing and storytelling. There is a picture in my book, Stop Waiting for Perfect, of me and my younger sister when I think I was about either 3 or 4. She's about 6 or 8 months, like propped up in the corner. I have this notebook in my lap and I'm writing. I have no idea what I was writing, but I love writing. I love storytelling. I love words. And you fast forward a few years. And then when I was 6, I wrote my very first book. Well, it was, yeah, like a kid's book. I used the homework paper that I had at my grandparents' house to write this story about dinosaurs in outer space. And so the title was Dinosaurs in Outer Space. And I remember when my dad came to pick us up, it was like the summer before first grade or something. And I was in the reading challenge for the local library. And he was like, well, you should add that book to the list of books that you read. And I was like, but it's not a real book. Like, I'm just a kid. And his reasoning, his logic was, well, if you wrote it, then you read it. And I was like, can't really argue with that.
Yeah.
But it was such a pivotal moment because that's when I like first identified as a writer, right? Because my dad had seen that in me and encouraged it and nourished it. And as I got older, especially in middle school, high school, I was obsessed with teen magazines like Teen People, YM, Cosmo Girl, like all of these now defunct magazines. I get them delivered every month to my door. I go up into my bedroom and read them cover to cover. And I loved it, right? But like, I didn't see Black girls represented in those pages. Okay. So it was before Beyonce was Beyonce. It's before Michelle was First Lady. It was before Black Girl Magic was trending and before Black Lives Matter was a movement. And so I didn't see myself. And as I got into high school, I was like, I want to be editor-in-chief of a teen magazine. Like that's how I knew best to impact change, right? Because I like writing. And then when I was editor of my student newspaper, I saw through the columns that I wrote there that my writing not only benefited me, right? Because like first and foremost, it's very cathartic. For me, it's how I process the world. It's how I make sense of things. And what I found in high school was that it also could help others. And so I very much believe in that, be the change you want to see. And so that's why I said about the path of journalism, which has had like some ups and downs. I did a brief stint in nonprofit communications and PR, came back to the newsroom, and now I'm full-time freelance writing again. And I'm an author as well, and speaker, storyteller, all of these things. But it all comes back to wanting to use my words to make a difference and ultimately help someone feel less alone, but in particular, Black women and girls, because we're so often overlooked and ignored in mainstream media.
Yep. Amen. I love how you said that, how you are doing that. That's all needed and really important. So great for you. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I will say I also was really into teen magazine as a child, obviously. I mean, I believe we all were.
Yeah.
But because I had a hard time also understanding the world, I did discover a lot through writing, but also I played with my dolls for a lot longer than I want to admit. But to help me, help me learn like about a lot of things that I couldn't understand. For some reason, the dolls and writing in my journal, they really helped me through a lot of those moments. So
I love that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Okay, so Stop Waiting for Perfect is a amazing title. Can you give us a sneak peek into the book and how it guides readers to step out of their comfort zones and embrace their power?
Yeah, so it's really funny that that was not the original title. So when I first had the idea for the book, when I was writing the book proposal back in 2017, the original working title, because I know that everything is subject to change in publishing. So I knew when I signed the book deal that there was a very good possibility that the title could change. But the original title was Trust Your Dopeness, and it was actually inspired by my friend Melissa Kimball, who's founder of hashtag Black Creatives. And at the time, I think I was at Girl Scouts and she was working for Ebony, and she had invited me to do this Twitter chat about Black girls and just like our experiences, and how I think at the time there was a study that came out and said that, we are like over disciplined in the school system. And so it's me and it's the executive director of a nonprofit for girls. And I was just feeling so much imposter syndrome because I was like, Melissa, I don't have my own nonprofit. I haven't done any studies or research around this. And she gave me this really inspiring and incredible pep talk that just kind of like solidified my expertise. She's like, you know what you're talking about. You have experience that matters and is worthy as well. And my like takeaway from that was Trust Your Dopeness, which then became the working title for the book and some other articles that I had done in this research. Because at the time, the book was very narrowly focused on overcoming imposter syndrome. And I kind of say that in quotation marks because for me, at least, it isn't something that I've overcome once. And now I'm like this super confident person who's walking around like every time I level up, every time I challenge myself, every time I step outside of my comfort zone, I feel that imposter syndrome. And I've been feeling it lately, even having written a book that also encompasses imposter syndrome. But fast forward to, I believe it was last year or 2021, after we had the book deal, it's signed, and we're going through, some changes and talks with me, my editor and my agent, and realized that Trust Your Dopeness is actually under copyright by like a major global conglomerate. And
oh, man.
I know, I was like, oh, I don't have major conglomerate lawsuit money. So I was like, we need
right.
We need to change this. And it was a gift actually, in how it helped expand the premise of the book, because we had a Google Doc, I kid you not, of about like 30, 35 alternate titles. And I was just like, you got to stop waiting for the perfect title to come and and they looked at each other. We're on Zoom and I'm like talking because I was just like going off on a tangent. And I was like, they were like, oh, I think that's it. And it had come from a newsletter that I had written about writing the book. Everything's very meta and like intertwined. But in that newsletter, I was talking about writing the first draft and how it was really hard. And because I was trying to write this perfect first draft, right? Like in my head, I had this vision of how it was all going to go down. I'm going to be in a coffee shop in the window seat with my latte and my lo-fi hip hop playing in my headphones, writing this book. That was the vision, right?
Yeah.
Like that was the thought that was in my head. And in reality, it was a lot of these stolen moments, like in the nursery at 2 a.m., 4 a.m., breastfeeding my daughter with one arm and like typing in my notes app with the other hand, right? Because that's when the inspiration would come and like we'd like have to get in where I fit in during nap times when she went down for bed. And before, she started daycare and we had full-time childcare. And so it was a call to action for me, honestly, like to stop waiting for these perfect moments, the perfect circumstances, the perfect insert, whatever it is here, before you get started on this big dream or vision or goal or project that you have in mind. And to just start now, start messy, like be uncomfortable with the imperfections, because you can always narrate along the way. Like there was another tweet that I saw when I was writing the draft that said, you can edit bad, but you can't edit nothing. And I really was like, that's a word. That is a word. So that is how kind of the title came about. And it's very fitting, I feel like, of the moment too. Like it's giving a permission slip to everybody, but in particular, Black women and girls, because we've been conditioned to be perfect our entire lives. And this book is saying, no, you don't have to, not anymore. We're done with that.
I love all of that. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. I will say that to your point, I did start my own book, writing my own book, my first book, earlier, like the end of last year in October. But I had a plan too that I was like, I'm gonna have it done. I'm gonna have the first draft done in like 7 months. And it's gonna be, I'm gonna have it editing from there. Okay, so no,
life happens.
Yeah, so I had to have a pause because one, I made it all the way up until like it's about my life. So I did it from like my childhood to up until 2022 last year. So I made it really far. But but then I was like, last year was so traumatizing for me that it was hard for me to write about it because it's so fresh to me that I was like, I need to pause and come back to it. So I haven't touched it since I think maybe January of this year. And I have to my plan is to get back on it eventually, but I keep waiting. It's because I'm afraid of how to end it. Like I want it ended on a happier note, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And as I was saying, like I'm kind of like waiting for it to be perfect as well, but that's not gonna happen. So I have to like go back into it.
Yeah. And I mean, also, I just want to like kudos to you too for recognizing that you needed to pause and honoring that, because I think so many times like we will push through and we'll just keep going no matter what, because again, that's what we've been conditioned to do. That's how we operate. That's how we survive in this world, right? And so to take the time and honor yourself in your story by pausing and kind of like, I'm gonna let it rest and I'm going to rest, hopefully as well, is really, that's radical and amazing. So that's, just shout out to you for doing that. That's awesome.
Thank you. Okay, so your writing covers diverse topics from personal struggles to empowerment. How do you navigate this breadth of subjects to create impactful and relatable narratives?
Yeah, I love this question because it's so intuitive for me. Like, I don't know any other way, right? Other than to be personal, probably a little bit too transparent at times. And just, I like this education nonprofit I worked at before talked about courageous vulnerability. And I think that's what a lot of it is rooted in. There's this Toni Morrison quote where she says, if there's a book you want to read that hasn't been written yet, you have to write it. And I really took that to heart. Like that became my kind of mission statement in writing the book, but also in a lot of the other stories that I write as well. I remember at the beginning of our infertility journey where, for my whole career, I've been, I've done personal essays is kind of how I got my start even as a freelance writer, but it's always been about me, my life, my like lessons, career journey, etc. And this pulled my husband into it as well. And I remember asking him, before I started writing publicly about it, I was like, is this okay? Are you okay? Like, can I bring you into this as well? And he kind of looked at me like, I think you have to. And not in like any of us are, like we owe anybody else our stories. That's not what he was saying, but it was a sense of, I knew what I was looking for in some of these stories. Like infertility is like an isolating experience in and of itself. And then when you couple that with being a Black woman, like it amplifies it because we are not represented in the studies. We are not represented in the clinics. The little like baby bulletin board success stories in the doctor's office are not Black and brown. Like it was very isolating for me. And so I knew I wanted to write about it and kind of document it as it was happening, because there was also another world where I could just wait and see what happens and wait until, we had a baby and like have this success story and share the fairy tale happy ending, right? Like that's something that I could have done. And that's what a lot of people do. And there's no shade, in that as well. And because writing has always been so cathartic to me, because I believe in sharing and I want to help other people feel less alone. Like I couldn't find these stories written from the perspective of a young Black woman, so I'm going to write them. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, it not only helped me and especially writing it as it happened, right? Because we didn't know how it was going to turn out. It took us multiple IVF cycles to have our daughter. And to this day, like there's a story I wrote for Self about like the 8 lessons or something I learned from 4 failed IVF cycles. And that is the story I get the most emails about, the most DMs. And I know exactly, I shouldn't say I know, but I can imagine like what brings people to that story, right? They've had their own failed cycle. They're feeling alone and depressed, sad, angry, all of these things. And they're on Google at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, looking for community, looking for some kind of solidarity, someone else who can relate and knows what they're going through, has been there, done that. And they find my story. And then because we're humans and we're, inquisitive, they look me up on like Google or Instagram, and then they see Violet. They see that we had our baby, and they DM me, they email, and they're like, oh my gosh, like this gave me so much hope. And thank you for sharing. Like it's inspiring me to go on. And that just lights up my life. Like that gives me reason and purpose. That like solidifies that what I'm doing matters and it's making a difference. And so that's just like, that's my writing style. That's how, I don't know any other way to be, because like, I don't have time or energy to pretend to be someone else. And I want to share that authenticity, that vulnerability, to model, especially for other Black women and girls, that, you don't have to have everything together. You can be like, imperfect mess. There's beauty, right, in those imperfections as well. And just sharing as I go to bring others along with me.
That's so beautiful. I've had guests on the show recently that have also gone through IVF journeys as well, and they've all been blessed to have children, which I think is so amazing and so such a blessing. But it's just like, it just shows you how it really is a universal thing. Like we're all kind of going through it all at once, and it's just great to have you and others who can share their stories to inspire others to know there is hope out there. It is possible. And I just feel like it's such a great way to have this platform to really help and have guests like you to share that and to give hopefully somebody the push to keep going.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Imposter syndrome and self-doubt are common challenges. How do you draw from your personal experiences to help others overcome these obstacles and cultivate self-belief?
Yeah, I mean, as I write in the book as well, like this is ongoing. It's a process for me. It's a journey. And I imagine that'll be a lifelong one. And I've been trying in my own kind of inner work to reframe this, idea of imposter syndrome. Anyway, it's definitely gotten, and for good reason, right, a bad rep, because it's the clinical definition is talking about people who are high achievers, who have this record of success and accomplishments and still, like believe that they're not worthy or they're self-doubt. And I know that that is true for me personally. I know there's been a lot of talk recently about like, is imposter syndrome real? Stop telling Black women they have imposter syndrome.
It's real.
2 things can be true, right? Like I know from my own experience that it is real for me. And I also know that racism and sexism play a role in that as well.
Facts.
These 2 things can coexist. And what I've been looking at and noticing kind of these trends and patterns in my own experience is that the times where I felt imposter syndrome, I think, as I mentioned before, I'm leveling up, I'm stepping into a new role, I'm taking a chance, I'm, entering some kind of unknown territory. And the imposter syndrome creeps up because that's that fight or flight, human response, and just kind of like panic mode. Whereas like intellectually, I know that I am smart and I am talented and I'm qualified and I deserve to be here. And I panic, right, in those moments because I've never been in these circumstances before.
Right.
When I started my role as director of communications at an education nonprofit, I'd never worked in that role before. Becoming a published author, I have not done this before. And so I'm checking these things off that I've always wanted to do and that I have worked really hard toward. And when I'm in them, it's still kind of a shock to the system, right? But I like to think of, okay, imposter syndrome is showing up. Why? Because this is new. This is new because I've never done it before. And it's a good thing, actually, because it means that I'm not remaining stagnant. I'm not staying in the comfort zone. I'm pushing myself. I'm leveling up somehow in my life or career. And that growth is a good thing. And sometimes when those things happen, imposter syndrome kind of tags along, the inner critic tags along, and they're like, hey, wait, we're afraid, right? Like, I don't want to fail. I don't want to embarrass myself. I want to stay in the bubble, in the comfort zone, but that's not where the magic happens. That's not where the growth happens. And some things that I've been using even lately with myself is just kind of like having those conversations with the inner critic, and we all have one. I named mine Negative Nancy because I love alliteration, but encourage you to name yours however you see fit. But I'm just like, okay, girl, like we've been here before, we've done this before. I know you're trying to keep me safe, right? Like I know your inner critic has good intentions, right? They want to protect you, but in doing that, oftentimes they end up holding you back, right? You don't take the chance, you don't apply for the job, you don't go for the promotion, you don't write the book, because that critic is being like, you can't do this, you're not good enough. But really, it's just scared. It's a big scaredy cat. And like, what if we fail? Oh my gosh. And that's just human. That's human nature. And honor it, accept it, look at it in the face and be like, okay, I see you, thank you. But like, I've got it from here, and work on, that confidence. Really, I believe that confidence is a muscle, courage is a muscle. And then the more we use it, the easier we get, or easier it gets to, navigate these circumstances. But I oftentimes will have to put my inner critic in its place. I call it my feel goods folder on numerous occasions, right? So those DMs and emails I was telling you about before from that story, but honestly, anything that people have written in and talked about how my work has impacted them, how it's helped them, I save all of those notes. I save them for a rainy day. You have to, because especially I think in writing or any creative field, honestly, there's a lot, right? There's like, your confidence can be shaken. Social media is always showing you someone else's wins and their highlight reel. And so it can be very easy to get insecure and intimidated. And when you refer back to those notes from people that you know or people that you don't know, and it like reminds you why you're doing what you're doing and that it matters and that it's helping someone else, is having this positive impact on someone else's life, like that gives me the fuel to continue, the confidence to continue in doing what I'm doing. And so I encourage everyone, no matter what industry you're in, to have that folder on your phone and your inbox, wherever it might be, to save those notes and refer to them on a rainy day. That's the important part, right? Because I, for a while, would like hoard them, but forget to go to them in those moments of panic and in those moments of self-doubt. And I did this recently where I was like, girl, use your own advice. Like, go back to the feel goods folder. And I ended up crying. I was tearing up reading some of the notes from people. And it was like, okay, like, yeah, I'm not on this bestsellers list, and I'm not, on like this review thing or whatever. This
accolade. You're not there yet.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for the reframing. I thank you. And it's like, those things are nice. I'm not going to lie and sit here and be like, oh, I don't care about those. Cause like, no, I'm a human. I'm a Scorpio, especially. Like, jealousy is my jam, for better or worse. But like, that's not the why. That's not the purpose. That is not the impact and the legacy that I'm trying to leave behind, right? Like, it's those notes and having other people see themselves in my work. And that's what keeps me going. So whatever that is for you, whatever anyone needs to like look at to remind themselves of that purpose and that mission and that why, do that.
That is great advice. Thank you for that. I agree with you. I feel like, to me, fear is is kind of often considered my best friend, but also my worst enemy. But I think to me, fear is a girl because she's a little bitch. But fear.
Say it again.
So fear is my best friend because she's always having me, pushed out of my comfort zone, and she makes me better.
Mm-hmm.
And I really love that. Like I wouldn't be able to be me and do what I do without that fear, because that I wouldn't I don't know if that makes sense, but that's just how I feel. I feel like if I didn't have the fear, I probably wouldn't do so many things that I've done, even though it feels like it should be the opposite. But in my opinion, I feel like the fear really does help you to get further and to do
Yeah.
bigger things.
Yeah, it's like using that motivating force for good. It's reframing, right? Like taking this seemingly negative thing and being like, actually, there is some good. Because I feel the same way about jealousy. Like I joked about it before, but like I think about it now, like, okay, what is it trying to teach me? And it's often like, this is a goal that I have or something that I desire for myself. Like our feelings can teach us so many things if we just stop to listen
Yeah.
to them and stop trying to brush them aside, especially the more like, taboo ones or the quote bad ones. There are no bad feelings. There are bad behaviors, but there aren't bad feelings. Feelings are just feelings and they're meant to be felt. So feeling the fear, feeling the jealousy, allowing yourself that human experience and feeling your emotions and then helping or letting them, like kind of guide you along or inform something that, you may not have known about yourself or your goals or what you want to do. And I especially love like making friends with your fear. And I talk about that in the book as well, because at least for me, it ain't going nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like if you're doing life right, in
Embrace
my
it.
opinion, fear is going to be there, right? Like unless maybe you're a cisgender heterosexual white guy, like in that case. But for the rest of us, like, it's there. And
Yeah.
so like I don't believe in like, okay, I need to be fearless. No, I need to bring the fear along with me and just make sure that it's not in the driver's seat, right? Like you can ride shotgun, you can be in the back or whatever, but like you're not going to control or dictate what I do. But a little bit is not a bad thing, right? Because it can be that motivating, that driving force, like you said. So making
Yeah.
friends with fear. I love it.
Yeah. But to be noted, fearless also means having fear anyway, but still overcome, but still, going through it. It doesn't mean you don't have any fear. So it's kind of
Absolutely.
like, yeah, it's a kind of like you have to frame it the right way, but
Yeah,
I get what
yeah.
you mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so your work is a source of inspiration for Black women. How do you approach your writing and facilitation to resonate with their unique experiences while also fostering broader connections?
Yeah, and such a great question. And I remember sitting at one of the library events I did for the book, and a white woman had asked, is this book for women? And I was like, it's for anyone who can relate, right? Who is recovering or aspiring, not aspiring perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist, or, a high achiever who's super ambitious and struggles with self-doubt, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, all the things. And this book was written specifically for Black women and girls because I am a Black woman and I was once a Black girl.
Yeah.
And something that was really powerful, recently, I went back to my high school. I went to this all-girl Catholic conservative school, and I was one of two Black girls in my graduating class.
Oh man.
It was a time. And going back, and it's still predominantly white, the school, but there's definitely more than just two Black girls in the class. And looking out into that audience, and afterward, it was funny because the guidance counselor who booked me for the event is like, they're going to swarm you after this. And I was like, I laughed it off, but then like legit, they had like dismissed them from the theater, and it was like whoosh, right? They all like came on, and they were like, thank you so much. Like, we're so excited. Will you come back and be our Black History Month speaker? Like, they felt seen and just me being there, like my presence, and then sharing my story. Oh, I cried.
I'm
cried
crying right now.
because it was such a full circle moment. Like that's where I started my journalism career, and that's where I knew I wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to write for Black girls, and just never have any other Black girl feel the way that I did, right? Like I remember vividly in 7th grade praying to God to make me white so that I would be beautiful,
I've
right?
done
Because
that,
it's
yeah.
just there was the
Mhm.
Britney Spears era, Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, like, all blonde, white pop stars. And I obviously did not look like that. Representation matters.
Mhm.
And that I could be that representation for those girls. And afterward, one of them, she's like, I want to interview you for the student newspaper, which I was just like looking at her on Zoom. And I'm like, you are me from like, it was just, it just blew my mind that I was like, oh my gosh, what a gift, right? Because I
Mhm.
didn't have that when I was in their shoes. And so that I get to be that for them. And that's how, putting the work out there, the writing that I do, the speaking that I do, there are certainly universal themes to it. Absolutely, yes. And I know my audience. I
Mhm.
know who I'm writing for. If other people benefit from it, that's great. But at the end of the day, and something that's been really special at some of the book events as well is like the moms that are bringing their daughters and they're like, oh, I'm also going to get a copy for my mom and my auntie, that it can have this generational kind of ripple effect. I'm like, this is really special and I do not take it for granted whatsoever. But I believe fundamentally, like, this is my purpose. This is why I'm here. This is what I've been put on earth to do. And I take that calling very seriously,
Mhm.
that it is important work to kind of undo some of these generational things. Like I write in a book about the scene from Scandal where Papa Pope is telling Olivia, like, you have to be twice as good to get half as much. Like, how many of us have heard that throughout our lives and our careers? Because that's just kind of been like, that's what Black women do. That's what we've had to do and what our grandmothers and their mothers have had to do to survive in this country for so long. And it comes at a cost.
Mhm.
There is health risk, there's stress, there's mental health, there's depression, there's all of these things. And I think, like, where has it gotten me? Like, yes, successful to a degree, but also not without its stress and challenges. And so I want to show my daughter a different way. I want to show her what it looks like to rest, like to not have to constantly strive and push herself to not be perfect. And that, if I do nothing else, if I could just give her permission and then others like permission through the book and my writing and my work to do the same, then that's what it's all for.
Mhm. Oh, I'm like tearing up. Oh, that's Nixer. You are a blessing in this world. I love that so much.
Oh, I appreciate that so much.
Mhm. Empowerment and wellness go hand in hand. Can you share an example of how your wellness facilitation work has helped individuals embrace their power and embrace self-care?
Yeah. This, I love, like I said before, universal themes to everything that I do. And it's also written and done with Black women and girls in mind. And recently I did this workshop with Sister Afia's community mental health and wellness program here in Chicago for Black women. And I just love us. I love being around us. It's
Yeah.
like it's such a vibe. Like I just every day thank God, like thank you for making me a Black woman. Like
Yes.
I feel bad for other people because I'm like, you don't get to experience.
That's
And
right. Say it louder.
okay. And being in community with us, even though it was on Zoom, we did this. I led them in a guided journaling session using some exercises from the book and writing a breakup letter actually to their inner critic, which I've done in a couple of different workshops that I've done. But this one, I mean, there were tears like all around. Because it was just we had cultivated this safe space, setting some norms and everything, but also just like the respect and integrity in the room, the love that we have for one another, the community, the sisterhood, honestly, that exists there. So being able to set the tone in that way. And, I gave them the prompt, gave them some of the background, talked about the inner critic and some breathing exercises, guided meditation and everything. And then I allow time for them to do their writing. And afterward went around and a few of the women shared their letters, like read them aloud. And it's so powerful, right? It's something about writing that, and coming to terms with your inner critic who may have been, with you all your life and held you back from a lot of things. And I think something too, that critic can also be someone we love, can be someone close to us. It can be
Mm-hmm.
your mom, can be an auntie, it can be a grandmother, someone again who has,
Always your family.
listen, that's
It's always family.
a whole other topic, right? They have your best wishes at heart, right? Like they think they're doing you a favor, and it's their fear that's
Mm-hmm.
really like getting into
Mm-hmm.
it. And the letters that these one woman wrote a poem that was like super powerful because her inner critic was her mom. Like she was
Mm.
telling, not her mom that wasn't in the workshop with us, but just like voicing that and how it's impacted her throughout her whole life. And so I just think, I mean, like wellness is very white. Like when you Google yoga teacher, like skinny white girls are the first thing to pop up, which is really upsetting because they are not the originators, right? Like it did not begin with them. And so there's a lot of like, a lot going on there. And what I love about seeing Black and Brown, South Asian teachers, like people more like diverse yoga teachers in the world, is because it's reclaiming of that, of what our ancestors did, what what they've always known, right? And we kind of strayed away from that, like as the generations have gone on and Western culture and everything like that. So it's very beautiful, and I do not take it for granted being in wellness spaces with Black women and women of color, because I know what we carry into those spaces, right? Mm-hmm. Like literally the weight of the world rests on our shoulders. And so having, whether it's like the yoga, mindfulness session, guided journaling, and doing that wellness work with each other, it is very sacred. Mm-hmm. It's very liberating and is rejuvenating as well. Cause like how special is that to be in community with other Black women and be able to pour into each other, right? In a world that is always like asking and demanding so much of us to like create that safe space. And so it's very, I love it. It's some of my like favorite work, and just an honor to be able to facilitate and guide, because it's not like, oh, I'm a teacher, I have all the answers, I know best. Like, no, you have the answers. We are all the subject matter experts of our own life, but it's just creating that space for you to tap into that inner power and that intuition and your voice and just all of those things.
Well said. As an author, journalist, and speaker, how do you find balance in addressing personal experiences while also advocating for broader change within society?
Yeah, great question. And I remember vividly, I think it was around at this point, I don't remember if it was the 2016 or 2020 election, but just like this idea that the personal is political, right? I think for a long time I had tried to be, quote, politically correct, and I didn't want to offend, and I didn't like all of these things that have been conditioned, like a good Black girl does. And it just came to a point where I was like, that don't matter. Like that does not matter, right? The respectability politics, that all of the things that like go into it. And it was just that it came to a point where I was like, this is me. This is what I care about. I'm going to own it. And if you don't agree or you don't like it, unfollow, unsubscribe. Like it's not
go
gonna
away.
Yeah, because I think the
go
people
over there
in me, right? Like once upon a time, but it just got to a point, especially with like how tumultuous everything is. It's like I am not interested in. I'm not for everybody, and that's okay.
No one is really. Yeah.
No. I mean, there's people who don't like Beyonce, like my sister, but it's okay. Very
not to name names, but
right, yeah, no, not to call her out.
Anyhow.
Exactly. But yeah, I just remember I was like, Beyonce, no, like there are people who don't like Beyonce, there are people who don't like me, but I'm always going to be a Black liberal feminist. Like that is what I believe in, that's what I stand for. I don't apologize about it, and I still have a lot of work to do in educating myself, like and a lot of unlearning. And like white supremacy, perfection is like a symptom of that. And we're all, just the society that we live in have like somehow or some way been impacted or shaped by it. So it's not like, oh, I've reached this state of enlightenment. And like it's constant work and educating myself, unlearning and relearning, and it's ongoing. And I think that's honestly how it should be, right? Like we should always be looking to better ourselves and become more educated about the world around us. So yeah, like personal is political. This is what I believe, this is what I stand for, and not making any kind of apologies about it. Once upon a time I did, like, but now, when you know better, you do better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I will say I learned from adulting and from healing that unlearning is really the key because
Mm-hmm.
we've learned so many things and from our families who learn from their family, their parents. And it's like all of these things are not always the best way to, go about our lives. And
Yes.
unlearning is, I think, really important for us now because we have grown so much as in the world and we need to do better. We need to know how to do better. And the past ways aren't always working anymore. So we have to evolve or die.
Yes, literally. And it's like I understand and I try to like extend grace to like my mom and my grandpa, like because they were all doing the best that they could
Yeah.
with what they had. And there was a lot of, survival tendencies that they had to do in
Right.
order to get ahead. And so it's like I recognize and that got us where, I am today. And so I'm grateful for that. And I recognize the privilege that I have in the unlearning and the
Yeah.
undoing and going about it a different way. So it's like, that both and where it's like, yes, this served a purpose once upon a time, but
And now move
we
on.
don't have to, we don't have to do that anymore.
Exactly.
We don't have to struggle.
Yes, that part. Okay, so your upcoming book encourages stepping out of comfort zones. Can you share a personal experience where taking that leap of faith led to unexpected growth and transformation?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I feel like I'm in it right now.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, right before the book came out, I put in my notice. I was at Fortune at the time. I was health and wellness reporter and had been feeling this tension for some time, right? Between like this push and pull of do you stay in traditional media, stay in the newsroom and try to keep, climbing the masthead and get the promotions and everything else like that? Or do I go along this path and bet on myself and tell the stories that I want to tell, become like a full-time author and freelance writer and speaker and take this chance on myself and also like my well-being, right? So I was honestly burnt out for the second time, like in full-time traditional media. So I feel like I don't know if it's me, I'm the problem, or it's media. I think it's them. But it was just like the burnout. And over the summer, even my therapist had noticed, she was like, I'm picking up on some different depressive symptoms. And I was like, all right, well, time out. Like something's gotta change because no job is worth your mental health.
Facts.
Period.
Yep.
I don't care how much it pays. If it's costing you your mental health and wellness, it is not worth it. And I was burnt out. I was depressed. I was frustrated, irritated, fatigued, like didn't have energy to play with my daughter when she got home from daycare. And I was just like, that's not what I want. That's not what I want to do. Like, something has to change. And I, guilty of not taking my own advice and was waiting for that perfect moment where everything just kind of aligned. And then it was just like, no, no. And it's now or never, but it was just like everything was shaping up to be like, okay, now is the moment. And I think I'm still kind of waiting to see how it all shapes out. Like the freelance coach that I've been working with, Jenny Gritters, who I love, was very adamant that I take this time. I quit in the beginning of September. So she was like, the rest of the year, I just want you, like, your homework is to rest and recover. Your homework is to go on coffee dates with friends, which I just did this morning, and like get back into my morning workout routine, like to start to refill my own cup before, because it can be very easy, right, to just pivot and go like all in on your own thing, and that can also lead to burnout, right? And that's the very thing that I was trying to get away from. So I'm being, as much as possible because bills still need to get paid. But with this time and this season and fall and winter, especially, like I think the timing of the year is perfect as well, where we are kind of going into hibernation. It gets dark here around like 4 o'clock or 4:30 in Chicago to spend some time getting grounded and recovering, replenishing myself, my cup, and be very intentional about what I do next and how I move about the world. So I'm still very much a work in progress, and I always will be. I think, but it's a very pivotal time of like transformation right now. But began with taking a leap and stepping way outside of my comfort zone. I've done the full-time freelancing thing every like here and there. It was kind of like start and stop, and I'd always like find something else and take on another role, but have not done it, as a mom with a kid in daycare. And like there's real, like reality of things that need to taken care of, and just wondering like, is my writing enough? Am I enough? And trusting that I am, and it will be. So stay tuned for the answer.
Looking ahead, what aspirations do you hold for Stop Waiting for Perfect and your ongoing impact in empowering women through your writing, speaking, and facilitation?
Yeah, I hope, and I'm borrowing this from another friend of mine whose book came out earlier this year, Taylor Morrison, who said that like, I want this book to do well enough that I get to write more books. And that's where I am now. I mean, of course, like New York Times bestsellers list, Oprah's book club, Reese's book club, whoever's book club, wants to pick it up. That would be great. And I'm just excited to see where it goes. We're coming up on the holiday season and New Year's and people making resolutions, and maybe this can help them, like release perfection in their lives next year in commencement season. Like I think for graduates, it'll be really, it'll resonate with them as well. So I'm excited. I can also see like workbooks that complement it, or like a guided journal, and like a whole kind of like Stop Waiting for Perfect universe. And at the same time, continue to write more books will be very exciting, and doing more speaking, more workshops, more of that wellness facilitating that we talked about earlier. Being in community in person and both virtually with Black women and girls is my happy place. We recently did a exercise in the freelance group that I'm in that talked about like the times you were really happy and like in your career and in your life, what were you doing? And it was that moment at my high school, right? Like writing or talking to them about the book. It was seeing my daughter after these multiple IVF cycles hold my book that I had written after multiple rejections from publishers, right? Like, so it's those kind of moments where I'm walking fully and firmly in my purpose that just like give me so much life. And so more of that. I want more of those moments.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
Is there any advice for our audience for those who are to be aspiring authors, or anything you want to offer us today to share to the audience?
Yeah, to trust your voice. And that goes whether you're an artist, a writer, a singer, a teacher, whatever that is. Like you have a unique gift and value in the world that it is your responsibility to share and to act forward with, right? Because I think, again, going back to waiting for those perfect moments and opportunities and circumstances. And if you wait, you'll be waiting forever, because that perfect moment does not exist. And so I want to give people permission and encouragement to start now, start imperfectly, start messy, but just start. Right? You can always change it. You can always reiterate. You can always edit. You can tweak it. You can make it better, but you can't do any of that if you don't get started. So like the tweet said, you can edit bad, but you can't edit nothing. So
love that. And lastly, how can our audience find you?
Yeah, can keep in touch at ltinthecity.com. I have a weekly motivational newsletter that drops every Wednesday morning. You can also find the book Stop Waiting for Perfect wherever books are sold. And I also narrate the audio book. So if you're more of a listener than a reader, be sure to check that out as well. And on social media at LT in the City.
Thank you, L'Oreal. You've been such an amazing guest, and I'm so happy to have met you and to have this time with you today.
Yeah, it's so great. Thank you for having me. I really just, admire what you do, and really honored to be here.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
And that is a wrap. Fearless Narratives airs every Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. Thank you for joining us today. You have been an amazing audience, and we really love your support. So we also would love for you to give us a nice 5-star review. And until next time, stay fearless.